What the hell is this? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new video. In today's video, I'm going to go through a number of articles I've seen in the West and other papers around the world. And I'm just going to go over it and maybe have a laugh. And it's amazing what ridiculous articles there are. I mean, don't these journalists have any common sense? Don't they do any journalism? Don't they do any proofreading? I mean, seriously, what the hell is this stuff? So I'm going to start with this first of all. And it's come from India.com. And as you know, Indians are quite deluded. Most of them are, unfortunately. They hear any old story on the social media or Chinese whispers, and they spread it like wildfire, like it's true. I mean, come on, guys, don't you do some proper journalistic work? Come on for a change. And all of this stuff that comes out of India is just laughable. I mean, do Indian journalists have any respect left in the world? I mean, look at this. Story of a mystery Ukrainian pilot who shot down 6 Russian jets goes viral. 6 Russian jets. One Ukrainian airplane shoots down 6 Russian jets. So first of all, Mr. Journalist, where are the 6 crashes then? Where's the 6 Russian jets that is shot down? It's because if it shot it down over Ukraine, there should be, some sort of explosion or crash site of 6 Russian jets that's been shot down. And most of Ukraine has not been taken over by Russia yet. So, Russian soldiers should have a lot of access to these jets that have been shot down and stuff. So where are the 6 jets that are shot down? I don't believe any of this crap that's going around. First of all, the first day of the war, Russia destroyed all of the airports. All of the airports in Ukraine have been shot down. All the runways have been destroyed. All of the bunkers have been destroyed. Airline hangars have been destroyed. So Russia is in control of the skies at the moment. And the first thing they did was make sure no Ukrainian jets are going to fly out. And first thing Russia has to make sure they have air superiority. So all of these airports have been, shut down and runways destroyed. How the hell does one Ukrainian plane fly up in the air, shoots down 6 Russian jets, and disappears again? Do Russians not have any radar? Do Russians not have any intelligence? I mean, this is all crap. I mean, Russia has got some of the sophisticated satellites in the world, so they can track a Ukraine jet if it's flying around. This is not a stealth jet, by the way. This is a normal jet. They can track a Ukrainian jet if it's going to be flying around. If it lands somewhere, they can pinpoint which airport it's going to land. If it's going to take off from airport, for example, they can make sure which airport it's going to take out from. But Russia would have done all of this intelligence on the first day of the war. On the first day, all the airports were literally taken down. And even now, Russia has control over most of these airports. So all of these stories coming out is pure BS and pure idiotic and really stupid, I must say. Really stupid. So let's go over some other articles, shall we? Ukraine's claim to have repelled Russian attempt to seize Kharkiv, Belarus to join invasion. So this is the thing. Russia is not invading any city at this moment. What they're doing, they're surrounding cities, they're surrounding Kiev, they're surrounding all of these major cities, second largest cities, third largest cities around Ukraine. And, this is one of the least dangerous war that Russia has ever fought. Even the Americans are saying that there's hardly any civilian casualties. I mean, there are 1 or 2, but we're not talking about the Iraq war where £1 million of bombs were just dropped on Iraq and so many civilians were destroyed. The whole country of Iraq, whole of Baghdad was destroyed. Millions and millions of tons and millions of bombs were dropped in the first week. This is nothing like that in Ukraine. Russia has pinpointed certain, areas like airports. They've not destroyed any infrastructure. They've not destroyed any civilian buildings. They've only destroyed military installations, arms depots, things like that. And even the Americans are saying this is probably the least damaging war that Americans have ever seen. I mean, this is nothing like what Afghanistan had gone through or Iraq had gone through. Afghanistan was bombed for weeks or months, hundreds and thousands or even not millions of bombs are dropped on those countries. So many civilians killed or displaced. This is nothing compared to that. So, I mean, a lot of these journalists, they don't seem to have any military background. And you can see what Russia is trying to do. They're taking out Ukraine's major facilities and they're surrounding these cities. They don't want to go into these cities where it could be a bloodbath. There's stories about civilians being trained as part of the Ukrainian army and given weapons. So they don't want anything to do with a bloodbath. They don't want to be seen killing any civilians. So what they're doing, they're surrounding these cities and they're going to be starving these cities until they surrender. So that's the Russian tactic by the looks of it. So when I see things like Ukrainians claim to have repelled Russian attempt to seize Kharkiv, I don't believe any of that crap, because I don't think Russia is trying to seize any cities at this stage. It's only been 3 or 4 days now. They're not going to try and seize any cities. They're going to basically stay in the outskirts and they're going to starve these cities out till they surrender. And I think that's their main tactics. And any fire, I'm hearing reports that any fire or arms fire going on inside Kiev or any other cities, Russia is basically just seeing what kind of resistance there is, and they're pulling back. Basically, they're not engaging in any fights. They're just going in there and then retreating and then staying on the outskirts and basically building up their base on the outskirts of the cities. And it's only been 3 or 4 days, and that's the tactic that they're using, and it's a good tactic. It's avoid civilian casualties, and this is probably the best way to take over these cities and stop the fighting, because once they go into these cities, it's dangerous. They could be ambushed, for example. They have a lot of Stinger missiles provided by the West, by Europeans, by Americans. Their tanks will be taken out. And talking about tanks, I'm seeing a lot of stories about old Russian tanks being sent in as well. So I don't think this is the real Russian army. I think these are basically cannon fodder. They're sending old tanks from 1950s or 1960s, World War One, World War Two tanks. They're sending them in, and these are basically cannon fodder because they know Ukrainians have a lot of anti-tank missiles, and they're basically using these tanks as cannon fodder for target practice for a lot of these weapons, and they identifying which areas have these weapons. And what they're going to do is they're going to go in, stay in the outskirts, and they're going to use satellite images and intelligence and maybe special forces to go in and try and take these cities bit by bit, but not going gung-ho and having loads of casualties, for example, because they do have a lot of weapons. They do have a lot of guerrilla warfare. So Russia wants to avoid that. So I think what Russia is doing is correct. There's not been much civilian casualties, and it's a good tactic to have. And a lot of these journalists don't really understand these tactics. And I'm seeing a lot of Western papers saying Ukraine, their brave president and brave people are repelling these attacks. They're not repelling anything. Russia is not going in. They're on the outskirts of these cities, and they're just testing the waters at the moment. So they're not going in. So it's got nothing to do with repelling attacks. They're just seeing what's out there, what kind of resistance there is, and they're going to wait it out. So that's my thoughts anyway. And look at this. Putin's humiliating losses exposed. 4,300 dead and 146 tanks smashed. I don't believe that for a second, because Putin has sent maybe he hasn't even sent that many soldiers in, and he's not going in gun-ho. I mean, he's on the outskirts of cities. Russia basically are control of the sky, so any resistance will probably be bombed out from the sky. They've got a lot of intelligence. They've got a lot of drones going around. They got satellite images. So I don't believe anybody. I don't think there's 44,300 dead. I think that's just propaganda coming out of Ukraine, and the West are just loving it. Any propaganda, any stories like this, West are kind of pretty much licking their lips and loving it. They don't need to have any proof. They don't need any proof, anything like that. They just love it and they just eat it up. And you can see here, it's also in social media. It's not just the papers, and you can see, women are basically. Deborah Haynes is saying. There's about 46 Russian warplanes down. I don't believe that for a second. I don't believe there's 46 warplanes down. 26 helicopters. I don't think so. 146 tanks. I'm not sure about that. But, you can see the propaganda coming out of the West and in social media trying to portray that Ukraine is winning. They're not winning. I mean, Ukraine doesn't really have much of an army. Russian army is trained, they're experienced. They got all the technological advances. There is no way they would lose 46 Russian warplanes when they are in charge of the skies. It's impossible. And this is one of the reasons why Ukraine had to go, because Russia had to go in there, because even though Ukraine was not part of NATO, countries like UK were helping them build naval bases where they can house UK naval ships, US naval ships. They were holding joint exercises together. They were training the Ukrainian forces. Even though Ukraine was not part of NATO, there was a lot of this going on. And Russia felt that, they had to go in. They felt they had no choice. NATO wouldn't give them any guarantees about expanding NATO or stopping until it's the Russians' borders. So they wouldn't give them any guarantees about Russia's safety. They didn't do anything about the Minsk agreements. So Russia felt that they had no choice but to go in, because if they did nothing, UK and its allies and the US would have built up Ukraine up to a point where they became very powerful with all brand new weapons. And even though they're not a NATO country, they would have had a lot of weapons inside Ukraine, which could be a security risk to Russia, and not only to Russia but also to those breakaway provinces in Crimea, Donetsk, and Luhansk as well. And 15,000 people have died in the Donetsk area because of Ukrainians using all of these weapons that the West has given them. Russia had to go in and protect its own people, because these are Russian-speaking people. A lot of them have Russian passports. So Russia felt they had no choice but to go in. But at the end of the day, things like this is not going to be told over the West papers. They're not going to tell you the full story. They like to paint Putin as the bad guy, but they're not going to say exactly what are the reasons Russia is doing this. They're not doing it for fun. They're not doing it to invade. They had their own security concerns, and this is not something that's happened overnight. This happened over 7-8 years. They had 7-8 years to negotiate the Minsk agreement and to implement it. Nothing happened. They had 7 and 8 years to basically promise Russia. They promised Russia that NATO would not expand. So NATO just needed security guarantees, and nothing was happening. The West just kept humiliating Russia year after year, putting sanctions on them year after year, and enough was enough, and Putin had to go in for security concerns and because of Russia's own people being killed in the Donetsk area. So it's this guy again, Kiev Phantom. This is the legendary fighter aircraft pilot who shot down 6 fighter planes during 30 hours. So you see all of these social media people, they have no idea how war works. They see this little post in social media and they spread it like wildfire. People are just stupid, most of them. You can't believe any of this crap coming out, because if Russia controls the skies, it's destroyed every single airport, it's got control over every single airport. How the hell is this guy flying off? Because not only do you need a runway You need fuel, you need maintenance, you need a lot to fly an aircraft, and then you got to land it as well. And plus you got to avoid all of these satellite um, images and stuff. Plus, Russia will have a lot of S-400s anti-aircraft missiles stationed around the borders, and these can any aircraft flying around, any Ukrainian aircraft flying around, these S-400s will catch them easily. So I don't believe any story about Ukrainian fighters shooting down 6 Russian aircraft. It's just ridiculous. People that believe it are really stupid. Now you have Liz Truss already making excuses for Britain's economy. She's saying economic cost of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, she says. Basically, now she's going to blame Brexit, the cost of inflation, gas prices, all of the stuff. They're going to blame it on Russia now. But people need to realize all of this stuff was happening way before this war in Ukraine, way before. So she's going to blame everything onto Russia now. And she thinks she can just get away with it, just blame Russia, and people are stupid enough to fall for it. Unfortunately, most people will fall for it, because that's what most British people are like. They don't really look at the big picture or do any of their own investigation. So yeah, the blame game has already started. It was China before, now it's going to be Russia. So you got Russian TV host cries about losing Italian villa and sanctions over Ukraine invasion hit. So you see a lot of Russians around in Europe, and a lot of them being sanctioned all over Europe. You've got stories about Roman Abramovich as well being targeted in Chelsea. And what this is going to do, it's going to push away all of these billionaires Russian billionaires all over Europe. It's going to push them away. They're going to leave the country, and they're going to invest instead in China or any other friendly countries to Russia, Central Asia or Middle East, for example. But most of them will probably go to China, because the way these guys are being treated, and you can see from an earlier article I made another video about the list of sanctions, and you can see a whole list of sanctions against a lot of Russians, home and abroad. And all of this is going to do is just going to push these Russians out of Europe. They're going to take their money out of Europe, and they're going to invest it in China. And that's just going to be bad for Europe, because all of that investment, all of that money is going out. Instead of them putting money into Europe, it's going to be taken out of the country. And that's just going to be bad news for the European economy, bad news for the British economy, and good news for the Chinese economy, because money is going out of Europe and coming into China. So this one shows UK article again. It says disaster map shows Putin could wipe out millions in UK if Kent site is targeted. So basically it's saying that there's a nuclear power plant in Kent, and if Russia targets that nuclear power plant, see everything in pink, all of the people around there are just going to die. So they're basically scaring the British people, and you can see the warmongering and the scariness has already started. So just to kind of get people on their side, and they're doing this basically to get people's attention away from the poor job that the government has done in this country, with the high inflation, high taxes, high cost of living, high gas bills, electricity bills, high interest rates, high mortgages, high rent. All of this stuff the government is doing to push British to look at Russia and to blame Russia instead of their own failings. This is all about that. It was China before, now it's Russia. And after this war is ended, they're going to go back to China again. So you can see here, Jamie Carragher criticizes Chelsea and Roman Abramovich statement, really poor and embarrassing. So you can see people are starting to go after Roman Abramovich. He recently said that he's going to let go of Chelsea, and he's going to give Chelsea, still going to retain ownership, but the stewardship is going to give it to a charitable foundation, as you can see on Saturday. So he's been targeted, and a lot of rich Russians are being targeted all around, not only just UK but all over Europe, and they're going to be forced out. To be honest, I don't see them staying in UK or in Europe for much longer. The amount of anti-Russian hysteria there is around, they're just not going to take it. They're going to take the money and they're going to go back to Russia or go to China. So this guy says, Ukraine defense minister urges civilians to join forces. So, as you know, the Ukrainian army hardly exists. You know, they have poor equipment. They're just running around, unorganized. And this guy is basically saying civilians should join the fight. And this reminds me of a film in Hollywood I saw a few years ago called The Red Dawn. And it's about a film where it's American high school and some Russians have come to take over, and these American high school students take up arms. None of them have been trained in the army. They take up arms, they take up guns and things like that, and they basically kill all of these Russian invaders, and they win, and America wins the day. And this reminds me of that, and I think this guy's been watching a lot of Hollywood films, so he's asking a lot of these civilians to take up arms and to fight against the Russian army. And it's not going to work, because the Russian army is way too sophisticated for this crap. And, you know, they're just sending them to their deaths, because if they're not trained, if they're not organized, they're just sending them to their deaths. And also, if the civilians are fully armed, you know, there's going to be more civilian casualties then, because Russia's going to have to target these civilians. If these civilians are in these apartment buildings shooting at Russian soldiers from the window, then Russian soldiers will have to fight back, and that means these, you know, apartment blocks where they're shooting from will be targeted on air raids and bombs, for example, tanks. So not only are they endangering more civilian deaths, you know, they're asking for it really, and you know, they're going to use them as human shields. And I think civilians joining the army is just bad news all around, because a lot of these civilians, you know, they're not trained. They'll be given weapons, and maybe they'll run off with the weapons. You never know, and there might be a lot of crime going on, a lot of looting, a lot of criminal aspects of it, and they'll have brand new, you know, sophisticated weapons to go around shooting people with. And I just think it's a really, really bad idea, and it's going to hurt them in the future. So Germany announces major defense policy shift in the face of Russian-Ukraine invasion. So basically, Germany had tried to stay neutral in this. They even refused to send weapons to Ukraine. They sent a lot of helmets in the past, but now Scholz, who looks like a puppet of the US more and more every single day, he's nothing like his previous successor. The young lady who he replaced, you know, I'm sure Merkel would have never allowed this. And this guy seems to be very much a puppet government of the US. He's doing everything that America tells him to. He's single-handedly destroying Germany's economy. German businesses is destroying, because there's a huge amount of interlinks between Russian economy and German economy. They rely on each other a lot of exports and imports. And it seems to be destroying that all in like a matter of months. He's already destroyed the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. He doesn't seem to have any spine in his body to stand up to the US or stand up to the West. He's pretty much doing what they want him to, and it's a shame really, and it's absolutely embarrassing. It's just become another poodle like Blair and Boris and Morrison. So it's just embarrassing to see this happening. To be a lot of noise in the Western papers. Here, this one says Russia facing total isolation over Ukraine after ally China refuses to back them at the UN. So I see a lot of papers frothing at the mouth and really getting excited, saying, oh, this is the end of the China-Russia relationship. Far from it. Far from it. And these journalists don't seem to do their homework. First of all, you only need one veto. One veto is required to for a resolution not to go ahead at the UN. So Russia had the veto, so they vetoed. So that was fine. There was no need for China to use their veto. China knows, and Russia knows, that China have their back and they have each other's back. So they would have had discussed this before. They would have had discussed this before the UN resolution vote, and China would have said, look, we're gonna abstain from this vote, but secretly we have your back, and you know we do. The whole world knows that, but we have to abstain from this because the world is watching, and we might have the same issue facing us when with Taiwan, and a lot of other issues may come up. So this may backfire on us if we veto it, and we have to be very, very careful how the world looks at us. But we have your back 100%. And President Xi has already said they have Russia's back, and there has been a statement by Wang Yi as well, stating that China has, gives Russia its 100% support. So all of these Western papers are pretending that this is the end of the relationship. They really don't know what they're talking about, and they really need to do their homework. So I got this one. This is probably the funniest article I've read today. Truss backs Britain to go to Ukraine to fight the Russians. So this woman is telling British people to pack up, go to Ukraine and fight against Russian army. I mean, what the hell is this woman doing? Have you ever read anything more stupid in your whole life? I mean, look at this. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss has said she would absolutely support British nationals who choose to go to Ukraine to help fight the Russian invasion. What the hell does she think this is? Syria or something? You had a lot of Muslims going out of Britain, fighting in Syria, fighting in Iraq, fighting in Afghanistan, fighting against British soldiers. And they get classed as terrorists, they get put in Guantanamo Bay. But she's happy for British people to go to Ukraine, get themselves killed, for Ukraine, not get themselves killed for Britain, get themselves killed for Ukraine, and leave their family behind, leave everything behind, go there, kill yourself, and then she's happy about that. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever read in my whole life. This is the funniest article, seriously. Civilians help make Molotov cocktails to take on Russian forces. So Ukrainians are saying, asking civilians to make Molotov cocktails. Let me tell you something. If any Molotov cocktails are coming out of buildings and targeting Russian soldiers, Russia will call an airstrike to that building. Not only are they going to get killed, but they're going to get other civilians in that building killed as well at the same time. So anything like this is absolutely stupid, absolutely ridiculous, and the fact that these Western papers are going along with it, that makes them even more stupid as well. They're inviting civilian deaths by doing this. You can see here, Ukraine calls fighters to join Foreign Legion and stand against Putin. Liz Truss backs Brits fighting for freedom. I've already gone through this and I've simply had enough, guys. And you can see some of these articles flying around in the West. You would think that the West has more intelligence than this. You can see all of the double standards. You can see the, all of these propaganda frothing out their mouths. They're not doing any research. They're just coming up with crappy articles as they feel like it. Few months ago, it was all about China. Now all I see is anti-Russian propaganda. And once this Ukraine war is over, it's going to be back to China again. A few years ago, it was all about the Middle East, about Muslims. So you can see this never stops. And you would think that the West has more intelligence than this. You would think that people that grown up in the West, they're intelligent, they're educated. You would think they will have a lot of common sense. But this is worse. They are worse than third world countries in terms of their brain power. I've seen people in third world countries have more common sense and intelligence than some of these Western reporters and politicians. Absolutely makes me sick when I see things like this. Anyway, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the next video.